So we're going to begin Perek Lamed Chet, chapter 38 in the Tanya. This chapter is a little bit of a continuation of several chapters before, because several ideas are further clarified, especially the power of action versus the power of kavanah. Kavanah means intent and focus. As you know, the levushim of the neshama, the garments of the neshama, as they are observed in the physical body, are in the dibur. Partially they are in the speech, but also in the machshava, in one's thought. We have our maasim, our physical deeds, plus we have our way of communicating. Man is endowed with a great ability, and that is to communicate verbally, which is a higher form of communication than animals. So that is another form of expression. In some ways it's a higher form of expression than just to do a physical deed. And we also have the machshava, the thoughts. And what goes along with our thoughts is our kavanah. What exactly do we have in mind? Just a quick example, when you give charity, is it because you want to do the mitzvah of Hashem? Or because you feel bad for the individual? Or because you want to get him off your back? In other words, what exactly lies in the kavanah of the maaseh? It makes a world of a difference. As we're going to see in the end, as he's explained all along, the light of Hashem, the divine light, the Or and the Sof, mashpia, it definitely contributes immensely to the individual. While we are alive, we benefit tremendously from our actions, from our deeds, through this light. We're not only dealing with vitality. There is something called physical vitality, and there's something called spiritual vitality. It's not just that the individual has continuous vitality from above to give him direction, to show him the way, to give him strength. We're talking about a light, a divine light that elevates. It elevates the individual spiritually to holiness. And by doing so, it enables him to connect with the spiritual world, to connect with Hashem. The great tzaddikim, the righteous individuals that lived throughout history, were able to connect on a very, very high level to Hashem through something called dvekut, uledav kabo, as the Torah says. We should do everything we can to connect with Him. And we do, of course, our best, hopefully, through kiyum mitzvot, through observance of mitzvot, as well as through prayer. But even that is not necessarily a strong connection if there's no kavanah. If there's no real intent. You don't really want to do it. You don't really have in mind the real ideas of what it means to connect to Hashem. So this is a very important chapter in explaining some of those concepts, especially kavanah. He will elaborate a little bit more how kavanah makes a difference and why it is definitely a much higher level in performance of the mitzvah than just doing the mitzvah without kavanah, without intent, out of routine. A lot of people, unfortunately, pray because it's a routine. They get up in the morning, they go to pray. They do a mitzvah because it's just something that they got used to. It's going to make a world of a difference on the individual himself. And of course, in Shamayim, if one observes a mitzvah, or learns Torah, or prays with kavanah, he does so clearly, understanding what he's doing, and he means the words he says. Imagine a husband buying his wife a gift for her birthday. But it's not because of appreciation, it's because he doesn't want her to complain to him. You never think of me, you never buy me anything. So he wants to keep her quiet. Or he really buys, he goes out of his way to buy something because he appreciates all that she does for him. The connection between a husband and wife, we're going to somewhat see in this chapter, but in later chapters, is a little bit like the connection that a Jew can have with Hashem through kiddushin. How does a man marry a woman? He sanctifies her. In other words, he singles her out. She's going to be my wife, she's going to be the mother of my children. She's going to be the one that together with her we will build hopefully a solid partnership where the Shekhinah will reside in the home that we will build. In other words, the kavanah of the two of them are in sync. They want more or less the same things, even though they're different. And they work together in full cooperation towards achieving those goals. If that happens, then the marriage is blessed. Hopefully, B'ezrat Hashem, the marriage lasts. If they're not in sync, then all kinds of troubles arise. So the key is Kedusha, the key is holiness. And when we say holiness, we're talking about a lot of important details that Judaism emphasizes as to how to maintain, how to preserve a holy union. Holiness involves tzniut, it involves modesty in how people talk to each other and how they dress and how they basically go along living their life, not in a way to show off, to be discreet. All of this draws the light of Hashem into the home, draws the light of Hashem onto the individual, and when it does, it transforms him, transforms the couple. It's the glue. The Kedusha gives glue to the union. The reason why it gives glue is because the moment there is Kedusha, Hashem says, I'm going to be there with you. I'm the third partner. And as long as you follow my commandments, then I will help you and I will bless you. So Kedusha makes a world of a difference in one's home and in the observance of the mitzvot. They are much more complete, they are loftier, and one, of course, is rewarded a lot more in the world to come. But we're not dealing here with the world to come. We're not talking about so much about the reward. We want to see what it does to the individual. Because in the end, a lot of what is mentioned in the Tanya is intended to give strength, to transform the individual, to elevate him to great heights, to make his connection with Hashem strong and solid and permanent. And I say permanent because people sometimes are excited one day, the next day they cool off. If you want to have hot tea the whole time, what do? You keep the kettle on a low flame, on the fire, so you can always add.
Right.
You want the marriage to stay warm? The same thing. You have to keep that warmth on continuous flame. On a low flame, it's okay, but on a continuous flame, you don't want it to cool off. Because what happens in life is that people do cool off. People's excitement goes away, passion dies down to an extent. The connection that was once strong diminishes. Unless people are really, really sincere, truthful, and they're getting married to Shem Shammai for the sake of heaven, then they have some of the ingredients that can make that relationship last. So it's very, very similar. The connection between man and wife, between man and his wife, and between the Jew and Hashem is really a form of marriage. And that marriage comes about through mitzvot. But even though there are mitzvot, if there's no kavanah, there's no real intent, it's not 100% pure and sincere, then it will be lacking. So that is what we've been talking a little bit about in the past, in the previous chapter also, how much the mitzvot do for the nefesh habehemi, the nefesh hachiyuni, for the soul or the living spirit that gives life to the body. We're not talking about the neshama, the divine soul, because the divine soul doesn't really have to come down to this world to observe mitzvot. So it's what the divine light, what the observance of the mitzvot does to the physical body and to the nefesh habehemi in elevating them. It transforms them, it elevates them. So that is more or less what we covered in the past. Now he goes on to explain, as you well know, he says, it's brought down in the halacha, in the Gemara, that hirhur is not like dibur. Just thinking about something is not like saying it. When we say words, we've done something. The words that we uttered, that which we expressed, is like a maaseh. It's like a deed. It just came out of our mouth instead of using our hands and feet. So thinking by itself without saying the words is really almost nothing. you thought about it. That's very, very nice that you thought about it, but you didn't express it. You didn't carry it out. Therefore, if you read Kriyat Shema just by thinking about it, even though you put a lot of thought into it, you did not fulfill your obligation, lo yatsa. And you have to go back and repeat it, at the very least, the first sentence, Shema Yisrael. And the same thing with Birkat HaMazon Doraita, right? The same thing with all the brachot, the Rabbanan, and Tefillah, but ideally, lechatchila, everything should be said b'chavanah, not rushed through it. And that is why people who read or say the Hebrew without understanding, then they're missing out a lot. They should first understand the words. Otherwise, it is going to be difficult for them to have kavanah if they don't understand the words. And you do want to pray in Lashon HaKodesh, in Hebrew, because that is the original language in which the prayer was composed. It has more spiritual power, no doubt about it. But initially, it's okay to pray even in another language. Hashem understands all the languages, as long as there's kavanah. Kavanah, as we will see, makes a world of a difference. But if you understand the words in Lashon HaKodesh and you have kavanah, obviously that's even better. So what we need to first understand is why, if you said the words, but you didn't have kavanah completely, but you said it, then you fulfilled your obligation, sometimes at least. And if you did not say the words, but you had kavanah, but you did not say it, then it's like you didn't say anything. Here we're trying to prove that kavanah is very, very important, to be focused, to have intent. But here we're seeing that the speech makes the difference. Did you say the words or did you not say them? If you did not say anything, you just thought about it, it's like you didn't say anything. However, saying without having kavanah is also not complete. So which one is more important? So on the one hand, of course, speech is a real maaseh, is a real deed. You've done something. Just thinking about it, you haven't done anything. On the other hand, we will see that even the speech or the deed, but without the thought along with it, is really incomplete. So he continues on to say, all of this is only because the neshama doesn't really need to do anything for itself. What is the neshama here for? To elevate, as we said, the body, to elevate the nefesh ha-behemi. So deeds have to be performed. The one who's thinking or reflecting is the neshama, the divine soul. The one that's actually doing the maaseh, the actual physical deed, or the speech that's coming out of the mouth, is the nefesh ha-behemi, in the guf, the physical body. As I've explained several times, part of the reason why we have tchiyat ha-metim, when the dead will rise, the resurrection, is to give sachar, reward, to that guf, to that physical body that worked so hard. It is the one that performed the mitzvot, even though the neshama is the captain of the ship. That is why we have free will. Nonetheless, who's doing the actual work in this physical world? A physical body. So, words have to be said. Deeds need to be performed. You can't just say, I believe, I have a good heart. No, no, no. In Judaism, it's very clearly a necessity, a requirement that the individual perform. You can't just say, I believe, I accept this. No, you have to perform, you have to do. As we've explained before, here there's a great responsibility on the Jew's part too, not just for himself, but for the entire world. We have a mission. The Jewish people as a whole have a mission to elevate the world, not just themselves, but they can only do so by elevating first themselves. And then that immense light that will shine forth will elevate the entire world. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened. We didn't always do a good job. But that will happen when Mashiach comes. So right now, we have to do our best. We have to do our best in elevating ourselves. As I explained in another lecture, some people dream about elevating the entire community, their entire family. Just focus on yourself. Alevai, inshallah, you take care of yourself and you transform yourself to be a better person. And hopefully that will be an example for others to follow. So the neshama in coming down to this world has a very important job to elevate the nefesh. And the way it does that is through speech as well, as he says, through the chamesh motzaot hapeh. There are 5 modes, I guess you can call them, of expression through different parts of the mouth. As you know, the various letters that we use to compose a prayer come from different parts of the mouth. Some letters or some pronunciation happens through the teeth, others through the lips, others through the throat, right? They happen through different parts of the mouth, the various forms of pronunciation. So this is how we do it. This is how we articulate or we express our wishes, our prayers, whether it's praise, thanks, or the learning of Torah that is done also by verbalizing the words, not just looking at them and not saying them. So this is done through speech as well as through the various organs of the body, where we perform the active mitzvot through the various parts of our body. And all of this really is insinuated or emphasized in the word lasato, as we said in the previous chapter, that the Torah asks of us to do the will of Hashem. And how does it tell it to us? That don't think it's not so accessible, don't think that it's difficult. It's actually very easy, accessible to you, to do that which is right. Ki karov elecha davar beficha, in your mouth, ubelvavecha, in your heart, la'asoto. So that's the key word, that last word, la'asoto, to do it. So the Torah is not something beyond reach. It is accessible to us. It can be done through our mouth and through our heart. But don't forget, la'asoto, to perform, to do. So there are various ways with which we perform the mitzvot. Nonetheless, it is a fact that tefillah, prayer, or a blessing which has no kavanah, no intent, the rabbis compare that keguf beli neshama, like a physical body without a neshama. So he explains that just like all the nivraim, all the creations in the world, have a physical body and some sort of vitality, some sort of neshama. There is, for example, the ruach, the spirit that the human being has, and there is a spirit that animals have. There is something there that is keeping them alive. Hashem keeps everything alive. Not only does He keep them constantly alive, if He were to remove Himself, the vitality that He provides, for 1 second, everything will cease to exist. So in reality, that vitality that's coming from Hashem for everything in the world, including the galaxies, all the planets and the stars, this keeps them alive. This pretty much renews their vitality, mi'ayin leyesh. In other words, from no existence to existence, because if He were to remove Himself for 1 second, they would cease to exist. So the physical body, the inanimate objects, even stones, he says, rocks, earth, which is domem, which is an inanimate object, even that has some light and vitality to make sure that it does not go back to nothingness. So everything in the world that Hashem created contains within it the light of Hashem that provides it with its vitality. Likewise, he says, there's no comparison between the light and vitality that illuminates the physical body to the light and vitality that illuminates the neshama itself, the spirit of everything. How are they different? Nonetheless, they are different. And that's a very important idea that he's going to explain here, that apparently they should be the same. And in many ways they are the same, because the source of light is coming from the same place. So whether it's going to the neshama, whether it's going to the physical body, it's the same light. So in what way are they different? And in what way is the light going to the neshama much more important in a sense? So that's what he's going to talk about. So even though he says the two are pretty much equal in every way, the light that's going to the neshama, the light that's going to the physical body, is concealed. There's a certain amount of concealment, as you know, of this divine light. Not everybody sees it, therefore not everybody understands or admits that there is a Shem, because there's a certain hester, there's a certain concealment, plus various garments, various covers. So it's the same to the neshama, and it's the same to the physical body. They're both from this physical world. I'm talking here the nefesh. When I say neshama, it's interchangeable. Talk about the nefesh abehemi, down here below. The light that's coming through, the neshama, the light that's coming through the body, are both concealed. They're both from olam hazeh. And the concealment is equal in both. The light and vitality are directly from him. And this light, when it comes down, as he's explained in the past, has gone through various levels of contractions. It has gone down being concealed, it has gone down in levels, and it has gone down through ishtalshelut ha'olamot, through the various worlds that it came down, through various, many, and quite strong contractions. And these contractions, called tzimtzum in Kabbalah, is what somewhat diminishes that light. Because think about it, this spiritual light is totally incompatible with the physical body. They're totally different things. They can't really coexist. It's a miracle that they do. It's a miracle that a person's neshama in his physical body doesn't just leave, through some hole. Hashem keeps them together until the day of death. So that's a miracle in how he keeps them together. But in order for that to happen, that the neshama should be able to coexist in the body and should be able to be in this world, it has to go, in other words, through a change. There's some change that needs to happen to it that can adapt to this world. In the same way that this is true with the neshama, same thing with the light of Hashem coming down into this world and enabling this whole physical existence. This is a physical existence. It's different than the spiritual existence. So, briefly, he explains this Kabbalistic concept of tzimtzum here again, that the only way it can come down is through concealment and through contractions. If everything would be obvious and everything would be clear, then obviously this would be a spiritual world, not a physical world. When there's a physical world, there's the ability to resist, to rebel, God forbid, against Hashem, because we don't really see it with clarity. There's a concealment. There's a hester panim. Intentionally so. In other words, Hashem's design is that this world should have concealment in order for it to survive the way it is. So all of this light is coming down equally to the neshama, to the body, through various contractions, until it finally comes down and dresses itself up in klipat noga. As you recall, we mentioned many times this concept from the very beginning of the Tanya. He tells us that there's a shell. A shell is like a cover too, that is called klipat noga, that contains some good and some bad. We have the three complete unclean klipot, which represent evil, the exact opposite of the kedusha, the holiness. Then you have klipat noga, which is an intermediary. In other words, it's an in-between the good and the bad. It has some good, and it has some bad. So what we need to do is to elevate that bad that's mixed in the good. The completely bad ones, you can forget about them. They will only be corrected when Mashiach comes, when the world will be corrected. Till then, you have three klipot me'ot that are always tme'ot. But you have klipat noga, which is in between, that we have. That is where the light of Hashem comes in and dresses itself up and resides in. And that is the challenge of mankind. not just the Jew, of mankind, of humanity, is to fight this Nahash, the serpent, which is the story in the beginning of the Torah, with Chava, right? This is the Nahash, this is the bad that is there, that we have to be careful with, that we have to filter out, that we have to have a certain clarity as to what this evil wants of us. And basically, that's its job, is that we not follow Hashem's commandments, that we do not pay attention to what He wants of us. And so this is the challenge. This is the continuous challenge for all of humanity, whether we're selfish or unselfish, whether we do what Hashem wants of us or we do what we want. Why not just do what Hashem wants? It's not so easy. As long as this neshama is in a physical body, as long as this light of Hashem is in a way trapped. In a way it's trapped. It's in exile, in the Klipat Noga, in the depth of the darkness, as it is described elsewhere. It's dark. It's not clear. It's covered up. That people have all these ideas and all these fantasies, and they don't understand that we're here for just a short time and we have a job to accomplish. And the most important thing is to do what He wants of us. Anyway, so this is a continuous challenge. The challenge to be able to differentiate right from wrong, good from bad. And we have the ability to do so. The Jewish people have an advantage, that we were given the manual of instructions, but not everybody reads it. I always like to use the example of a dishwasher or even some other machinery that has many buttons, many functions, and many people just are too lazy and throw away the manual of instructions. They try to figure it out themselves and they don't end up using it to its maximum. Or they misuse it and they break it. What's the manual of instructions for? So we have the Torah, the manual of instructions on how to live our life. The Goyim have the 7 Noahide laws. If everybody would just follow the manual of instructions, it would be a beautiful world. But the Satan, the Yetzer Hara, right, they don't want to let you do that. So we have the light of Hashem being concealed through various contractions and garments, for it to be able to come down into this physical world, to be able to give vitality to that which is physical. And we're talking about in Klipat Noga, that is all that which is permissible for us and all that is pure for us to eat and enjoy. And of course, from that same Klipat Noga, you have the vitality that also the Klipot Atmeot, the unclean shells, nourish from. In the end, they nourish what they nourish, whatever vitality, from the Kedusha, indirectly. Without any Kedusha, they would cease to exist. But Klipat Noga is the one that acts as an intermediary between the good and the bad, the holy and the unholy. So here, what we're saying so far is that they're all equal. Equal meaning that they're all receiving the same light from the same source, through the same contractions, going through some concealment, through some garment. But what we need to know is that the He'ara, the illumination, the light coming down through the various garments, is not exactly the same by all. Even though we just said it is, it's not the same in its contraction and in its expansion. Now that's something that we don't see how, but he's going to give us a little bit of a mashal, various examples so that we can understand how they're different. But I'm just going to give you briefly an example in order to understand the idea of tzimtzum and hester. Because after all, what we're saying here is that this light of Hashem, the divine light, which is spiritual, comes down into a physical world to vitalize it, to illuminate it, to give it life. And it can only do so through contractions and through concealment. What's exactly the difference between the two? Concealment is easy to understand somewhat. We have windows here, and imagine now it's daytime. And you close the curtain bring down the shade, you'll have a little bit of light, but most of it will be concealed through the curtain, through the shade that's blocking out this light. That's called a stir, something blocking it. So what's tzimtzum? Imagine a window that is completely boarded up with plywood, and you make a little hole in the wood, and the light goes through that little hole. That's called tzimtzum. We took all that light, v'tzimtzamnu oto. In other words, we constricted it, limited it through just a little hole. You'll get all the light. Well, actually, a lot of light, but it will be constricted. You won't be able to see how shining it is, how great it is, the full intensity of the light. So that's tzimtzum. We're able to see a little bit of that light of Hashem in a very metzumtzam way. Why doesn't everybody see it? I think that's best explained in his last statement of the chapter. We'll get there. But for now, we have to understand that that's how this world functions. There's hester, there's levushim, there's garments, there's things that are concealing the divine light, but it's also, whatever is there, is betzimtzumim dolim. There are many tzimtzumim, and there are big tzimtzumim, big contractions, in order to be able to come down into this physical world. So what's exactly the difference between that which illuminates the neshama and that which illuminates the physical body? You have like this. You have in the physical body, or I should say in that which is an inanimate object, just like stones and dirt, you have this illumination, this light, in a very, very constricted way. Very, very constricted. How do you know it's very constricted? The light, the divine light that's coming down to a stone. How do you know it's constricted? Because that stone cannot grow. What's that stone missing that the plant has? A plant can grow. A plant has more vitality, in a sense, has something of a greater ability, and it's on a higher level, therefore, than the stone. So you have the light coming down into everything, including stones, but in stones, you can see how it's constricted, how it's limited, because it cannot grow. So it's very constricted in stones. In the tzomeach, on that level, plant life, you have slightly greater he'ara, much more than stones. Altogether, how many levels do we have? Anybody remember? 4. You have domem, tzomeach, chai, and medaber. You have that which is inanimate, that which is vegetable, or right, life that grows. You have chai, that which is alive, like animals. And then you have the 4th highest level, medaber, the human being, who's also able to speak. So look how the human being is being described. Because he and the animal both have some sort of nefesh, we started off saying. But this is ha-nefesh ha-medaberet. The human being has a spirit that can talk. That's something different, something very special. And I know what some people will say, those who are a little bit more secular, and my parrot can also talk. Mm-hmm. That's not talking. Even though animals have their way of communication, the ability of speech, the way the human being has, no animal has in the world, no matter how hard you try to train them. That is why man, Kabbalistically, is described as a medaber. So this level is a higher level than the other 3. And these 4 levels correspond to the 4 letters of Hashem, from which we derive that vitality. So all these 4 levels in existence, in creation, all contain that light, That light is derived from the 4 levels of Hashem. So, what did we see? That between them, these 4 levels, there's differences. Look at the additional abilities of the higher level of Tzomeach, of Chaim Medaber. So even though it's all one light coming down into them, nonetheless they're different, right? The same light, the same concealment coming down to all of them, but they're different. It's the same thing, that there's a great difference in the light, which is the pnimiyutin of the ratzon of Hashem bli hester. The light of Hashem is really without concealment itself, the light itself. When it comes down into the mitzvot ha'ma'asiyot, when it comes down and dresses up in a mitzvah that is being performed, and mitzvot that are being done through our speech, but without kavanah, compare those to the light that's coming down and dressing up in a mitzvah where there is kavanah. A kavanah, an intent to connect to Hashem, to attach ourselves to Hashem through fulfilling His ratzon. As we're supposed to do in the kavanah of tefillah and kriyat shema and the brachot and all the blessings, that our kavanah, when we say those words, is to connect with Hashem, to connect our thought with Him. And that is what happens when we do with kavanah. We actually connect to Hashem, we connect with His will, because His ratzon and Him, in other words Hashem, and His ratzon, what He wanted us to do is really one. So when we do that properly, we connect with Him. So, in the same way we said earlier, there's differences in the light that's affecting the vitality of all those levels in creation. The same thing here. There's no comparison whatsoever between doing a maaseh, a mitzvah, with kavanah or doing it without kavanah. So he goes on to say, don't think for a moment that this has to do with a ma'ala, with a high level that the sechel, the machshava, has over the action. You know, one may think, well, maybe it's because the machshava and the sechel are on a higher level than the actual physical deed. He says it has nothing really to do with that. It's not because the machshava, because the thought, are on a higher level than the deed. We connect with the deed too, to Hashem. It is important to keep in mind, as we've said before, that the performance of deeds, even without too much machshava and kavanah, are important, are necessary. Right now, his main emphasis on what he's really trying to communicate to us is that there is a big difference, a big difference between this deed, as important as it may be, if it's done with kavanah, without kavanah. That's where he's headed. But we really haven't seen it. So he's giving us various meshalim, various dugmaot, examples of how we can relate better to this, how we can see in the various forms of life how they're different. So he's going to say this too, you're going to see that it's a very different idea. That which is done with kavanah versus that which is done without kavanah. So how is something with kavanah superior than something without kavanah? Well, first of all, he says that was the ratzon of Hashem. That was the will of Hashem, that the thoughts should also reflect Hashem's ratzon. In other words, when we think about it, when we focus on it, reflect on it, that was Hashem's will. This should count as well. This should matter as well. Well, that's number one. Hashem wanted this to be considered something too. In other words, don't think that thoughts are nothing just because they're thought. Hashem wanted thoughts in kavanah to be regarded as well. Still, how is the light that's drawn through the machshava much greater than the light that is just drawn through observance of mitzvot without kavanah, or just done with their speech? How is the light greater? This superiority can be likened to the superiority of the light of the neshama over the physical body being a vessel to the neshama, whereas the neshama is really the essence of the individual. but it's within a physical body. So this neshama is definitely superior to the vessel. Just like, and in the same way, the mitzvah acts as a vessel to the kavanah. And that is why we can understand that a mitzvah that is performed without kavanah is also likened to a mitzvah without a neshama, because the mitzvah in itself, the actual deed, only is like a vessel, whereas the soul of the mitzvah lies in the kavanah. Even though he says that both in the mitzvah and in the kavanah, there is the Ratzon of Hashem dressed up in the two of them, they're both exactly the same, they both connect to Hashem in the same way, still the light is not the same. So basically, the light that's coming down through the kavanah will be much more powerful than that light that's coming down through just the observance of the mitzvah. And the best way to understand it, in other words, because we're talking about something spiritual, is through tzimtzum and itpashtut. He says, even though they appear to be the same, after all, the light is coming down, just remember, keep in mind, that the difference lies in the constriction and in their expansion. Somehow, that which comes down, or that which is performed, I should say, with kavanah, has a greater light because of a lesser tzimtzum, maybe, less constriction. It therefore does more for the person than without it. Because otherwise, where would the difference be noticed? It is noticeable. And soon, towards the end of the Perek now, he's going to tell us that there are different types of individuals that connect to Hashem in various ways too. It all depends how intelligent they are, how learned they are, whether they feel their connection to Hashem or they don't feel it as much. And that is how it is also with love. Love is something very powerful. Many people misunderstand love. Real, true love is to care. It's not to want something for yourself. That's called passion, that's called desire. True, pure love, as Judaism teaches, is the ability, or the desire, I should say, to care for someone, to do for them. Whether it's to do for Hashem, to do for someone, it's the same idea. The concept to love is to want to give, the act of giving. And some people feel it more than others. Some people are very, very, very ardent about something. They feel strongly about it. They want to give of themselves a lot to somebody. They're completely unselfish, to the point of self-sacrifice, which is a very important idea in Judaism, because sometimes that was required of us when it involved our emunah. Are you willing to give up your faith or not? How is a Jew supposed to give up his life for his faith? Especially he doesn't see it, he just believes it. And that he touched upon this in the past, and he will touch upon it here as well. That there's something there that we inherited, something that we have that allows us to do it. It's not so simple. But still, regardless of how we do it, there's still a difference between people. Some people do it with excitement. Some people are very interested in doing more. And some people do, let me just get by and do the minimum. So you see this in relationships between people, and you see this relationship with Hashem. Those who want to be more observant, those that are interested in self-growth, becoming better people, a better husband, better father, a better friend. Some people don't care about these things. You know, ask the average person in the street, what's your goal in life? Just make money, build a home. What about becoming a better person? What did you say? What does that mean? A better person? I am a good person. So, that tells you how far he or she is from understanding these concepts of connection with Hashem. That it's possible for almost every human being. It's not just for the Jewish people. But does the people think about it? So a lot depends, of course, on their neshama. A lot depends on what they do. A lot depends on their upbringing, education. But more important, do they stop to reflect on life? Do they use their intellect to ponder the creation of Hashem? That is really what it comes down to. That is why Chassidut emphasized the hitbonenut, to meditate, to reflect, to take time off and think about these things, because on your own, how are you ever going to get to it? Shabbat, Baruch Hashem, enables us to rest a little bit, but I think a lot of people use that day of rest to sleep. They're so tired. They eat, they pray. But to think, remember, the human being is able to think, to reflect. Hashem gave him that ability. All right, so he continues on to add here an aside that this idea of tzimtzum, of constriction, is somewhat explained in the Etz HaChaim, that the kavanot of mitzvot in Talmud Torah are compared to light, and the guf ha-mitzvot, these mitzvot themselves, are in the level of kelim, which is somewhat constricted. Because through the tzimtzum of the light, you have the vessels. So, in discussing the sefirot in the Kabbalah, you learn that each sefirah, in a sense, is a vessel that contains the light of Hashem, expressed differently, but that sefirah constricts that light as it's coming down into this physical world. So in the same way that you have that light which is not constricted, but you have kelim that constricted, same thing you have the kavanah of the mitzvot being compared to that light which is not constricted, versus regular mitzvot that are compared more to the kelim, to the vessels which constrict the light. Towards the end of the perek, I'm just going to summarize this a little bit. He says like this, towards the end of the chapter, that you have really 4 levels here. In talking about mitzvot in kavanah. The guf ha-mitzvah, the actual mitzvah, is 2 levels, is compared to 2 levels. The mitzvot ha-ma'asiyot, the actual physical mitzvot that we do, and the mitzvot ha-tluyot bedibur b'machshava. So you have 2. Those that we actually perform physically, and those that we do with our mouth, with our speech. Like Talmud Torah, Kriyat Shema, he says, prayer, the brachot, Birkat Hamazon. Then you have kavanat mitzvot. You actually have the intent of the mitzvot, which is like a neshama to the body, we said before. Because the mitzvah without the kavanah is like a body without the neshama. So the kavanah adds like a form of neshama to the mitzvah, and that is also divided into two levels. And he says that this kavanah is also divided into 2, just like you have 2 levels of neshama in a physical body. Because you have, in a physical body, you have a chai and a medaber, if you recall. You have that which is just living being, an animal, and that which has the ability of speech. So the 2 are on different levels, but still you have the 2 of them. What they have in common is that they are alive, but they're on a different level. So the same thing he says like this. When talking about kavanah, you have an individual who has the ability, he has the da'at, the sechel, the mind, to ponder the greatness of Hashem, and to, on his own, through pondering the greatness of Hashem, he's able to draw that light of Hashem on his nefesh, to want to connect to him, and through this kavanah he wishes to perform the mitzvot, and through this kavanah he prays. This man, this individual who's doing so, is able to definitely elevate himself to great heights. He's able to bring out true love and fear of Hashem. He's able to express himself a lot more, and that is coming about through his da'at, through his intellect, that he's able to reflect. So he has a big advantage over the one who's not going to be using his intellect, he's not going to be thinking about these things, and will therefore not be able to invest so much of his, I guess, desire and interest in the same way to perform the mitzvot. You've had people who've elevated themselves to great heights, who have expressed tremendous love and fear of Hashem, and you've had those who did not as much. He's explained to us the big difference between these two. One is coming about through his own efforts, of course, but it's coming about through his da'at. Stopping to think about the greatness of Hashem and using that da'at to therefore enhance or do the mitzvot properly through kavanah. Because he wants to achieve that connection as strong as possible, whether it's through his learning the Torah or through his prayer or through any performance of the mitzvot. He wants to do his best. He wants to do his maximum. Ledavkabo, to connect to Hashem. So he says, this type of individual, who is he compared to? From the two that we said before. We have the nefesh achai and the nefesh hamedaber. We have the living soul and the soul that is able to speak. This individual is compared to the higher level soul, the soul that is able to speak. He's not an animal. He's not just an individual that has instinct. He has sechel, he has da'at, and he's using it properly. So he's on that level. If he's using kavanah, that means he's using his sechel, his da'at. So he's on a higher level. Whoever's mind is a little bit more limited, doesn't use his sechel as much, does not ponder the greatness of Hashem, and cannot bring out as much the love and fear of Hashem that the other individual did. It was a love and fear that should be very, very strongly expressed in him. He does have a little bit. He is afraid perhaps of committing a sin, but it's not the same level of love and fear that the other one has, that it's there all the time, that it's very, very revealed, that it's very, very strong. So this other individual does not have that ability to think about these things, and he does not focus on it so much. The only thing that happens to him is that somehow he gets himself to awaken. Umitorer. What's awakened in him? That, if you recall from the previous chapters, he is able to awaken in him that concealed love that is within every Jew. Since when do we have a concealed love for Hashem? Yeah, we inherited it from our forefathers. In other words, as Jews, ever since Matan Torah, we've actually inherited. It's gone through all the generations. It was transmitted to us through the neshama. A certain concealed love for Hashem that at times is awakened. Where did you see it? You saw it in the Inquisition. You saw it in all kinds of situations where the simplest Jews, the simplest, they had a very just pure faith. They were prepared to give their life for Hashem. They were not the biggest tzaddikim. Where did that come from? Where did that ability come from? It was awakened in them. It says, no, this is a red line for me. I'm not converting, not giving up. Give my life up instead. Where does it take the courage to do that? I once explained that it came from the Akedah, which is just another way of understanding why did Hashem make Abraham and Yitzhak go through the story with the Akedah. Okay, you passed the test, you're willing to give your life. I didn't intend for you to give your life like that. What for? Now, to test him, Hashem knows the truth. It's to instill in the neshama of the Jewish nation that ability to give their life when called upon in the future. So we inherited that ability to give our life, the simplest Jew, by pure emunah. So sometimes that is awakened, he says. Not because it's there all the time, not because he takes the time to think about it. It's awakened, it's concealed in his body, in his heart, in his mind. Sometimes it's awakened. And he's awakened to also want to do the will of Hashem, to give of himself completely if necessary, in the same way he's willing or prepared to give his life for Hashem. He wishes also from time to time to connect to Hashem and to be one with him on his level. And that, of course, connection comes about through the observance of mitzvot as well, through the learning of Torah. He also has a little bit of Yirat Hashem too, not to rebel against him, to accept the yoke of heaven. And it's through this plain and simple kavanah that he's able to stay away from bad and to do that which is good, and to learn and to pray and to bless, to make blessings. But how does he make the blessings and how does he pray? Pashut, simple. Just saying the words without too much kavanah, without too much love and fear for Hashem. So this individual is compared to who? To the other level of a living spirit. A living spirit, but not on the level of medaber, but of high. It sounds a little bit bad to say that like an animal, but I'm only using it as a mashal. An animal is a living spirit too, but it's not on the level of a man. This man too, this individual too, by not reflecting, by not using his head, by not thinking for a moment how to perform this mitzvah in a better way, not learning the halachot perhaps, not having kavanah. This is what we're talking about here. Doing things without thinking about them, that brings him to the level of high. He's a living being, and what he does is use his instincts, not his intellect. Oh, he's afraid. Of what is he afraid? Is he afraid of doing that which is against the Kadosh Baruch Hu? No. Maybe he's afraid because of Gehenom. He's afraid of the punishment. You see how the level of fear is lower? Same thing with the level of love. Why do you do this for the person? Because you really care for them, or because you want them to give you something in return? It's a different level of love. So this individual can connect to Hashem as well through his observance of mitzvot, through his prayer, through his learning, but it's on a lower level. And therefore all that he does could stem from that which he's afraid of or that which he likes. Just like someone, likes certain things and he does it because he likes it, or he stays away from that which he knows will hurt him. He doesn't do it because of his sechel and da'at and binah and understanding that this is the correct thing to do. And this comes about through that concealed love that all Jews have. This is how he ends chapter 38, by reminding us that the kavanah of the mitzvah brings about a tremendous light that cannot come about just by a regular observance of mitzvot. It's a whole different idea. Even though the light of Hashem comes down from the same place, it just works differently when one has the kavanah versus the one that does not have the kavanah. And he says people are different. Some will have kavanah and some will not have kavanah. But even those that do not have the kavanah, at times they are awakened because of that concealed love that every Jew has. And obviously, that's better than nothing. For a person to pray, for a person to learn, even though he doesn't do it for the real ideas. Rabbis tell us when it comes to Torah, just learn Torah even if you're not doing it 100% for the sake of heaven. Why? Because eventually you will. As I've explained before, Hashem said once something very, very powerful. He says, I wouldn't have minded so much if my kids would have left me. In other words, they would stop observing mitzvot. But as long as they continue to learn my Torah. He says, why? Torah? Learning Torah is more important than mitzvot. Yeah, because the light of the Torah would eventually bring them back, b'tshuva. Someone who learns Torah has a better chance to do teshuvah. Somebody that learns has a better chance to become stronger, to be able to do battle with his yetzer hara. Not everyone does it. Therefore, not everyone is able to defeat the yetzer hara in every battle that they have. That is why kavanah is the ultimate goal, to complete the prayer, to complete the limud, to complete the mitzvah, in order to bring as much light as we can unto ourselves, to elevate ourselves to the highest level that we can. If a person just does something to get by, again, there's a joke, they say that there was a person that once gave charity just to fulfill the mitzvah. He could have given a lot more. When he came upstairs, they put him in the back seat, not in the front. They said, why are you giving me a back seat? He says, well, in this world, you just wanted to get by and just do the minimum. We too, we're going to give you a share to the world to come, but just to get by. We're going to just give you a spot. It's going to be in the back. We don't have to give you in the front seat. just to get by, just like you wanted to just get by, do the minimum. We're also just going to do the minimum for you. Yeah, it's all will eventually correspond to what we did. But it's not so much about the world to come. What really matters is this world. What we do for this world and what we do for ourselves. And in the end, even though that same light is affecting us, it's the same one, affecting us whether we do mitzvah with kavanah or without a kavanah. When we do something with a kavanah, it's like we're putting a neshama into a guf. The physical body is the mitzvah, it's the vessel. And now we're putting a neshama, we're putting a soul into it. We're drawing down a tremendous amount of light into it, which of course is a much more complete thing. This reflects itself in many areas of life. When a Jew is really serious about doing the mitzvot, he will be serious about everything in life. If a Jew is not serious, he's not a serious individual, he doesn't take his life seriously, he doesn't take his business seriously, he doesn't take his marriage seriously. It's a similar idea. If you want to do something right, hopefully that attitude will be demonstrated in other areas of life too. Right? It doesn't mean that you're going to be one way at home and another way outside. It's just that's hypocritical. To be complete means that you put everything into it. Imagine somebody who's a worker, he does a good job, and the boss tells him, I'm going to be away for 3 weeks. Oh, great. The boss is going to be away, he's not going to look, he's not going to see, I'm not going to come on time, I'm not going to do the job right. What does that tell you about the individual? It's totally incomplete, totally lacking, no kavanah whatsoever. He's doing the work because of the money, not because he wants to do the job. Right? This is in marriage the same thing, you know. Why are you doing it for her? Right? Are you doing it because you really care, because you really want to succeed, or just, you know, to keep her quiet, to make him happy, you know? Is it sincere or not sincere? So sincerity, purity of the heart, is reflected in kavanah. Because when a person just does a mitzvah, are you doing it because you're afraid? Are you doing it because you were told? Are you doing it because everybody's doing it? Why are you doing it? No, I'm doing it because Hashem told me. That kavanah of continuously doing it with the proper intent, in realizing that this is what Hashem expects of us, this is what He wants us to do for Him. This kavanah not only will complete the mitzvah, will draw a tremendous amount of light on him that will elevate him to greater heights than without kavanah. This is, I'm telling you, this is not easy. It's something that requires a lot of work. A lot of religious people pray with a little bit of kavanah sometimes. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, maybe with more kavanah. It requires training. It requires to slow down in prayer, to be able to focus on the words that one is saying. But I guarantee you, if you slow down on Ashrei Yeshvei Betecha or on Tehillim, and you understand the words, it will be a whole different experience. Wow, look at the words that David HaMelech is saying here. How beautiful, how sweet. And it's very inspiring. It's really inspiring. So Kavanah makes a world of a difference. And even though we started off saying that the thoughts alone are nothing, yes, but when you dress up those thoughts in Kavanah together with an action, then it completes the whole mitzvah.